for your speech. And if I had any doubt, now I can understand why you were not re-elected by the Likud, given your current position. Now, as I said, we have some time for questions from the audience. I would like just to install one idea that in a way is a question also to our two speakers. And that is, we know that both sides cherish certain goals that were mentioned here. Borders, Jerusalem, refugees, etc. To my mind, there is no way to reach any possible arrangement, whether it's on an interim or permanent basis, without each side prioritizing his own goals. Because take, for example, the issue of refugees vis-à-vis Jerusalem. Now, in my assessment, I might be wrong, I think that the issue of refugees is much more cardinal to the Israeli public, the Israeli Jewish public, whereas Jerusalem, as important as it is, I think it's more reachable in terms of putting it in a second place next to the issue of the refugees. So I think that if both sides start to prioritize and say, okay, this is where I can give up to some extent or even completely, whereas this I cannot at any circumstance give up. Once we understand that we cannot maximize, that we must optimize our goals, I think that this is a road to understanding. Anyhow, this is one of my own views of the current situation, because otherwise, if each side insists totally on his goals, then of course we know what is likely to happen. Now, please, if there is any question, please here, say. I think why don't you stand up and see if we can hear you. If not, you'll have to stand at the camera.
Okay. I have a question for each of you, and if I may, I have a friend in Beit Likia that because he's Palestinian, he's not able to come here, and he had a question. He texted. There's an asymmetry of power between Israel and the Palestinians. It's clearly. In Israel is a situation where the economy is strong. It's not like the 1980s. There's very little violence. It's not like the 90s. So there's little motivation, and the left is broken, as Mr. Meridor pointed out. So on the Israeli side, what has to change in order to shake up the Israeli political scene, that there will be a leader who will be more willing to take risks, when there doesn't seem to be a motivation to take risks? And on the Palestinian side, how do you accept this asymmetry? Like Mr. Meridor said, because Israel holds the cards, when they make an offer to you and it comes to giving up the right of return, how do you reconcile that, and are you able to reconcile that for the sake of a peace deal? And then for my friend Beit Likia, what he wants to know about, because in Beit Likia there's somewhat of frustration with the Palestinian Authority. You know, the infrastructure there is not so, it's declined since the 1990s. And, when I talk to them about their dreams, they feel that they don't feel the support from the authority to try to pursue, improving their economic situation with businesses and things like that. So the question from him is, what is going to happen with how do you see the future of economic cooperation until there is peace? And what can the Palestinian Authority do with the lack of peace to ensure economic development for Palestinians?
Thank you.
Would you take 2-3 questions and then?
Okay. So our speaker preferred to answer a series of questions, so we take one more, please.
Dr. Nabil Shah, thank you very much for coming and giving us the opportunity to listen to your opinion. I listened to your speech, but I missed one thing. If you are talking about Palestine, can you explain to us a little bit the difference between West Bank and Gaza? You lived, I heard today, several years in Gaza, but there is a big difference between the two parts. Can you explain how you in-house Palestine handle this?
Thank you. Please, in the middle, the lady there, please.
Hi, my name is Ariana Petri from Complutense University. I would have four very short questions, and I've written them down to make them easier forward. So, firstly, what hope for change is to be expected from civil society or business or joint ventures? Because it seems societies at large are finding it difficult to cope with the existing problems. Second, for each of the speakers tonight, I would like to ask them what would be for them, having been both involved in negotiations to a very high extent, what would be the common denominator conditions that for them are necessary and would at the same time make a final agreement both possible and implementable. Also, I'd like to ask, mirroring in a large sense the macro-political theory stances of their funders, in other words, the US and Europe, the two entities, Israel and the emerging Palestinian state, seem to exhibit very extreme and diverging realpolitik, hard power, and I don't know if the opposite would be liberal or idealistic, almost soft power inclinations, and how can these be brought towards the middle of the political spectrum?
Thank you. Okay, I'll take one more voice, and again female, and because otherwise we are going to run out of time.
Thank you. My question is, first question for both of you. Professor Yao said before that a very brave decision had to be made. Do you believe that each one of our leaders and Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, are brave enough to give up 100% of claims in both Israeli territory and Palestinian territory after an agreement? And second question for Dr. Shah. Do you believe that a genuine agreement, peace agreement with Israel is possible before the Palestinian Musalaha with Hamas? Or do you believe that after there will be agreement, it will troublize the Musalaha?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Although the leader is not a defendant here, we'll have the last word anyway. Just one word about asymmetry. Yes, there is asymmetry. Israel is now a strong country, economically, scientifically, education, in many ways. The number of people, 8 million people, 6 million Jews in this country, 10 times the number we were in 48. It's a huge success story. I feel quite proud of what we've achieved here. And I don't want to boast, but comparing to what happened around us, of course, we look quite strong, and I'm not ashamed of it, although one should never boast of strength. It's a fact of that. The problem here may lie in the other asymmetry. What is the goal? If the Israeli goal now, unlike Golda Meir or even Rabin, is to have the two states and end of conflict, and there is no negation of the existence of the Palestinian people, and we are ready to see in the two states the end of all claims, there is an asymmetry here. This is exactly what is missing on the other side. I haven't heard yet that there is a Jewish people. Even tonight we won't hear it. They say Israeli people, including the Israeli Arabs, of course. So because it does not give right to Aliyah, of course, if there's no Jewish people. It doesn't give any justification to Zionism, because I don't need it, but there is an asymmetry. We never wanted them to we don't say that they don't anymore. We used to say, God the said, there's no Palestinian people, we don't say it anymore. If the asymmetry should be changed into symmetry in that we see the end of all claims in an agreement, not leaving issues unresolved or making them conditional. The agreement conditional upon resolving the 194 issue, the refugee issue, which means we go back to square one. So this is just a remark. The other is that one should never boast not of strength, not because it is not nice and not polite, but because things change. You know. You've seen strong countries becoming weak, countries becoming strong. We base our cause here. Yes, of course, our being strong, we would not have survived. But we agreed that people demonstrated in Jerusalem last night that don't need an army, there wouldn't be a state. We know that. We don't accept it, never accept it. But strength is not measured just by military strength, not even economic. The first thing is to do the right thing. Feel that you are doing the just thing. And on this, we need to do what we think is right, and this is what I said we should do. I don't want to go back into it. What the IPCRI and what happens there, I don't know, but maybe Nabil knows better. But I would say something about economic cooperation. I don't want to paint a very rosy dream. We have seen all sorts of books about the peace as if in our tradition Mashiach is coming, the Messiah is coming. It's not that. But in fact, if one has a way to introduce logic into that crazy world, to that madness of the system, the world today is a world of cooperation. It's not of totally independent countries, interdependence, economic, cultural, scientific, even security. You have more and more interdependence. See the European Union and Europe as developed, see America with Mexico, and you can't do anything alone, more so small countries. I speak of Israel, not of Palestinians. As long as we thought stupid, we need to produce everything ourselves, Hebrew cucumber and the Jewish tomato, and we won't take any import, we failed. When we start to understand we need to cooperate and import for others and export to others and cooperate in investment, in research, we gained a lot, and we did the best with the globalization this way. If there's going to be built up here a Palestinian state alongside Israel, and I say with Jordan, I think should be included somehow, and they will have the wisdom not to be too proud of the nationalism, doing everything themselves, but doing it with us and with the others, all of us will gain a lot. Because cooperation is the name of the game. You specialize in certain things, you don't do everything, you take what others do better because they specialize in, and do it together. So a cooperation of that sort can really bring up an economy that's now, I think, $2,000, $3,000 per capita GDP, theirs, and 32,000, which is ours, 15 times higher, 14 times higher. It's not easy, but there is potential for them to grow with that if we do it with good intentions, and I think there is potential. The question of the West Bank, or the Yehuda Shomron and Gaza, I didn't want to touch it. It's very tough. I didn't want to be cheap, but of course, if there's an agreement, Abu Mazen, say, force the Hamas to drop all their weapons, all the rockets in the sea because it's going to be demilitarized. It's a dream, which is why I'm not sure we have an agreement tomorrow. But maybe it's, I don't want to go into it. It's a huge problem. It has to do with the fact that Hamas won the election. Nothing else. All of them. Don't forget the stupid mistake of ours, with a stupid mistake, forgive me, it was a non-wise mistake of the Americans, allowing the Hamas to participate, and they were the first sign of the Arab Spring. You get away from dictatorships, you give the masses the right to vote. They vote Ikhwan in Egypt, they vote for the Muslims, not for democratic liberal ideas. Then you're astonished, what happened? Go ahead, naivete, Santa Simplicitas, there is this statement of Bush, I don't want to go into it. One needs to be very cautious. And this is, by the way, when we speak of arrangement, what happened? I was asked, let me tell you, one of the meetings of this gang of six that is supposed to have run Israel, 6 ministers, the last government, one of these statements I read along this line, somebody said to me, suppose we take your advice, and there is a Palestinian state tomorrow morning. Then they will say we want elections. The Americans will say, yes, of course, let them go to election. Then Hamas wins, what do we do then with your ideas? So Ramadan is illegal, as the Americans said, we want to be on the right side of history with the Muslim brothers of Hamas and Hamas vote tomorrow. What do we do then? Do we have a guarantee? I must say, was a tough question. So we need to be cautious about it. What can the civil society do? Well, it's in the first place, it's a question of leaders elected for this by the people. Civil society can do a lot in cooperation. I would say that even foreigners who investigate foreign countries, they invest in things that create interdependence, like water projects and other things, and projects that are of the nature of joint ventures. It creates interest on both sides or three sides. This has a value added. It's not the thing, it's adding to it. The last thing was, are the leaders courageous enough to take decisions? You don't wait for me to give you the answer. I don't know the answer. I know that, I said it earlier, we need to see not to make the following mistake. Every proposal that is put on the table is full of risks. Definitely, it is. There's no risk-free proposal. When you see the risk, you say, I don't do it. This is a fallacy, a logical fallacy. You need to compare it with the option of not doing anything. How risky this is. My conclusion was, and I said it openly for several years, that not doing the thing is too risky. By the way, not only for us. It's not good for us, it's worse for them. First of all, see where we are, I don't know where they are. Second, this wave that I hope is subsiding, but the wave of religious movements, replacing national movements, Hamas replacing Fatah, Muslim Brotherhood replacing Egyptian, whatever, you see all over the world, is dangerous. When you introduce God Almighty here, and what you do is from God, and you know direct line to Him, there's no flexibility. There's no compromise. They don't compromise what religion tells. It has never been religious. If it becomes more and more religious, there won't be a solution. And the PLO is not part of that game. So time is not good for us. It's not good, making it even worse for them. Which is why it's time for leadership to see.
First time we met, I was in my honeymoon. We had fish in Okianos in Jerusalem. He tells me it doesn't exist anymore, so.
He's not coming to it.
Well, about the asymmetry of power, obviously it's the essence of the problem. Without an asymmetry of power, negotiations become much easier. International help to put us together and say you will not leave this room until you come with an agreement becomes not possible. Part of the problem is this asymmetry of power. And it's an asymmetry of power based on an asymmetry of historical perception of power. It was reminding me of that, Dan, just coming. That to the Israelis, they still think of the asymmetry the other way around, Holocaust style. We are the poor, we are the persecuted, we are the suffering. Whereas in reality, vis-a-vis the Palestinians, you are the power. 30 times our per capita income, and a nuclear power, 4th largest air force in the world, a strategic ally in the United States that is willing to help in so many ways. There is a real asymmetry. And how that is used, because you raised the issue that what can you do unilaterally, even if we cannot reach an agreement? At least stop taking our water and our land. I mean, where it exists. Today, 62% of the West Bank is called Area C. That is, it is under full control by the Israelis, and they will not let us live there or get water there or grow plants there. And therefore, 62% of our land, much of it does not have any Jerusalemite archaeology or any historical value or any settlements. But it's still there. Well, give us use of that land. Give us a chance to build it, to grow our plants in it. 32 million cubic meters of water are taken by the agricultural settlements in the River Jordan Valley, which in per capita use, settlers in the River Jordan Valley take 6 16 times the per capita use of water on the average among Palestinians. Settlers in general takes 12 times as much water as the per capita use by Palestinians. And Israelis in general have 4 times the per capita use of water than all Palestinians. You see, it's 4 times for all Israelis, it's 12 times for settlers, it's 16 times for settlers in the River Jordan Valley. So they take all the water, and they take all the land. You see, the question here is, to Israeli governments, even the word land for peace has become now insulting. What do you mean, give back land so that we can get peace? Give our land to our farmers, to give our water to our farmers. You know how much we get out of the water available in the West Bank only. We get 9% of that water. Israel and its settlements get 91% of the water produced in the West Bank. And in the past, we used to say, by the way, water was one of the permanent settlement issues. But if we go back to international law, it follows where the settlements are. And you already, the Israeli government have already chosen settlements to be over the water resources. So most of our water resources have settlements on them. And therefore, if you go to international law, these water resources will go. This is unfair. Honestly, I without any personal issue here, you have to study the narrative of the Palestinians, as I personally have studied the narratives of the Israelis. You have to study our agony, you have to study our pain, you have to study our wounds. You can't really treat us just like the stones or the drips of water available in the West Bank. And that is why I don't know about brave decisions. I already said that all the brave decisions have been taken already. That is the brave decision to accept that all of Palestine is 22% of the Palestine I was born in and I was driven out of. That with this 22%, now the discussion is about the 22%, not about the 1948. Who said we're discussing 1948? When it comes to land, we're discussing only the 22%. How much we don't belong to the Palestinians? You talk about Jerusalem, it's the jewel of the Palestinians' eye as it is for the Israelis. All right, what is better than dividing it, but then opening the borders and have one municipality there and really have it available for all Palestinians, like exactly the Vatican and Rome, the capital of the Vatican and the capital of Italy. This is the kind of ingenuity, this is the kind of creativity that is needed. But to say the Palestinians have to pay the sacrifice, they have to forgo the refugee issue, they have to forgo Jerusalem, they have to forget the River Jordan Valley, they have to forget about areas that have been populated by settlement blocks, then you are talking about asymmetry of power. You are not talking about feasibility, you are not talking about justice, you are not talking about international legality, you are just talking about asymmetry of power. And asymmetry of power is very self-defeating. There is no any country more powerful in the world than the United States. And look where every military trip they took was a disaster, including Somalia, and Iraq, and Afghanistan. Tell me, where did the Americans go with their power and did not come back with a disaster? And that is why I say, please try to overcome the asymmetry of power by thinking of the future and not only of the present. I can see the future in a two-state solution in which borders really are very light. Yes, of course, security and all of that, but where people can move, where tourists can move, where trade can move, where water can move. By the way, another interesting thing about our the way we complement each other. 3 actually areas in which Palestinians go to school are medicine, teaching, and high tech. I don't want to make any competition with Jordanians because most of the Jordanian medical doctors are Palestinians anyway. But Amman has made out of itself today as the hospital of the Arab world. Think of what can you do with Israel and Palestine together combined to create hospitals here for all the Arabs to go to for surgery, for complicated diseases, for cancer, and so on and so forth.
Don't wish them to be healthy. Don't wish them.
We bring them sick, we send them back healthy. The textile industry is dying in Israel. And you had to go to Jordan and to Egypt in order to create, to resettle, to relocate these issues. How about really relocating them in Gaza? You think how much more employment it could create and how much more complementarity it could create. And I mentioned high-tech and I mentioned tourism. Because with very little advertising, we already have about 1 million Russian tourists who come to Bethlehem every year. And many other Arabs and Muslims cannot come. They say, it's war. We cannot go through. So really, a real win-win game is a two-state solution, by and large, on the border of 67. Forget about more land for land for land. This dream for more land has to be stopped if the thinking is about a future that is good for both of us. Where asymmetry of power is not the only decider, but the future of Israelis and of Palestinians. And that's why I am hopeful. Look, every plebiscite that has been made, every public question that we made showed that up till this minute, and despite all the failures, 2/3 of the Israelis and about 80% of the Palestinians still want a two-state solution in peace, reached by negotiations. About Gaza, because I have to really say a word about Gaza. I was in Gaza just about a week ago. I know it's difficult and tough, but I think there's very little difference, neither ethnic nor religious nor ideological, between Gazans and West Bankers. It's really, when Mr. Sharon decided to evacuate overnight from Gaza and to put Gaza under siege, he cut the physical relationship between Gaza and the West Bank, which allowed Hamas to turn what was an elected victory into a military takeover. And therefore you have now two governments. But with the weakening of the Islamic parties in Egypt and in other places, Hamas is in real difficulty. And therefore I think it is possible to find a solution which they are already willing to accept a government led by Abu Mazen in which only independents serve and not Hamas and Fatah. They are accepting that in 6 months public elections should be made for president, for legislative council. And given really the changes, and I don't want to make any big anticipations, I think Fatah can win these elections, both in the West Bank and Gaza. And in fact, their decision to delay election was because of this calculation. If there is a united government based on democracy and uses as much flexibility you in Israel have created to include the religious parties in your own cabinets from the beginning of Israel until this minute, you can create options whereby a Gaza West Bank unity can be possible. I think it's in the good because that brings us closer to an end of conflict. That brings us closer to a willingness to get a permanent settlement accepted and implemented. But in order to do it, you have to really think of the Palestinian red lines and not only the Israeli red lines. And you have to think of what of these red lines are operative so that we can get a future that nobody can fight against and nobody can return and ask for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to our two guest speakers. Before we conclude, we just want to thank again everyone who made tonight's event possible, with particular thanks to Ambassador Baum, Ambassador Blumhardt, and the federal government in Switzerland. In addition, we'd like to thank the Palestinian Committee for involvement, interaction with Israeli society, IPCRI, Tel Aviv University, and last but certainly not least, our two guest speakers tonight. For more information on our upcoming events, please follow our respective organizations on social media and also on our websites, ipcri.org and resolution.tau.ac.al. Thank you again for coming, and hope you have a good night.